Okay, where's Moron? Okay, Moron's here, so McKeesport.
Yeah, look, Magellan, we're at the sprinkle here. You saw what happened. There's nothing I could do, right?
Maybe if you didn't lean over to insult me, you would have seen it coming.
Shut up, Tommy. It's not my fault.
Poor little furry thing.
I've never seen one close up before.
What are we gonna do? Can't just leave it here.
Oh, no. Loading it up took us over an hour.
Yeah, but where are we gonna take the deer? Yeah, well, I wouldn't say you did much better. Thought you were so cool. Watch and learn, he says. Well, I was watching. Know what I saw? It's alive! I think you tried to bite me! Oh, man!
No way that just happened. My car is completely destroyed.
I swear I've seen a lot of stuff in my life, but that was awesome.
It'll all make sense in a minute, okay? Hey, good morning. How's everyone doing today? So good to see you. Wherever you're joining us from this morning, man, if we haven't had a chance to meet you, my name is Garry. I'm one of the pastors here, and if you're listening on live stream, welcome here. If you're across the hall in Theater 2, welcome, and of course, right here in Theater 6. So good to see everybody. We're in a series called Hot Rod Theology. We started a couple of weeks ago, and it's our attempt to do what Jesus did so well when he taught. He was so good at using something that people were familiar with, things like baking, fishing, farming, and using them to help them understand a deeper spiritual truth or reality. And instead of baking or fishing or farming, we're going to use something that most of us are familiar, if not all of us, and that is a hot rod. And we're going to look at some of the things that are essential to a hot rod and compare them to the things that are essential to someone who considers themselves a follower of Jesus. Week 1, we looked at the engine, and we compared that to the Bible. And the bottom line for that whole thing was, you could have the best-looking engine in your hot rod, but if it doesn't run, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good. Same thing. If you have a Bible, but you're not engaging with it, it's not going to do you a lot of good. Last week, we looked at the steering wheel and compared that to prayer and how the steering wheel, like prayer, is a thing that can guide us down this highway that we call life. But often, we treat prayer not like a steering wheel, but like a spare tire, and we keep it in the trunk and only pull it out in case of emergency. And if you missed any of those messages, you can catch up online on our app or the website, and I would encourage you to do that. Today we're looking at the passenger seat, because life is just better together, isn't it? Here's a picture of an old friend of mine, and sitting in his hot rod that he built himself with his 2 young daughters. I mean, how awesome is that? Look at the smiles. I mean, they're just like, yeah, this is great. Life is better together. I mean, what would you rather say? Oh, man, I wish you were with us when we saw this, whatever this thing was that we saw. Words can't even begin to explain how awesome it was. Or would you rather say, wasn't that awesome? Kind of like we saw in that clip there, right? Like, how would you explain that to anybody? There is something about a shared experience, right? I mean, one of the things I love to do is golf. I just can't get out as much as I would like to. I'm not saying I'm good at it. I just like to get out there as much as I can, but it's hard. But my wife is so awesome. Sometimes she'll say, if it's a quiet night and it's nice weather, which we haven't had a lot of, she'll say, why don't you just went down to the golf course and do a quick round by yourself? And I love her for that. But here's the thing, I'm afraid to. I'm afraid to because that'll probably be the time I have the round of my life and I won't have anyone to share it with, right? So I don't do it. Life is just better when we share an experience or an experience with other people. Whatever that happens to be. It could be a spectacular fireworks show. An incredible sunset on the beach. A camping trip, a road trip. Watching a blockbuster movie like Top Gun, or going to your favorite band and watching them at a concert in person. Or on the flip side, maybe it's being with somebody when you're struggling with addiction. The loss of a loved one, a relationship, a job. Whatever it happens to be, those things are always better done with someone else. But often we go it alone because we feel like post turtles, don't we? Not sure what a post turtle is? Don't feel bad. I had no idea what a post turtle was until this week when I came across a story about a doctor who was stitching up this 70-year-old rancher from Texas. And as he was stitching him up, he asked him how he thought the then president, which was George W. Bush, was doing, as a president. And the old rancher said, Bush is a post turtle. And like us, the doctor's like, well, what is a post turtle? And that's when the rancher said, did you ever drive down a country road and you come across a fence post with the turtle balanced on top? He didn't get there by himself. He doesn't belong there. He just can't get anything done while he's up there. And you just want to help the poor thing down. That's a post turtle. Sometimes we all feel like post turtles, don't we? Because there are times when we feel like we don't belong. There's no room for us in the passenger seat to go for the ride. Well, there's a story in the Bible that can kind of help us work through that, not feeling like we belong and seeing how we can belong. It's a story that takes us all the way back to the beginnings of the Christian movement. The early days of this thing called church. The early church is a fascinating thing to study. There's been countless books written about it, articles, talks done on it. But the first group of those who believed that Jesus had actually died and rose again from the dead, and because of that had given them not only a new lease on life here and now, but in the future, in the next life, were known everywhere they went and lived for a number of things. But the number one thing they were known for, that made them stand out from everyone else, that people could spot a mile away, was the sense of community and belonging that characterized them. Here's how a man named Luke describes this community. It's found in the New Testament, the book called Acts, only called that because, well, it was just acts that the disciples did, the early disciples. But listen to this. Listen to what this community looked like. He writes, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. The early church was a group of people who were in community with each other. And as a result, there was a deep sense of belonging for everybody who was a part of that. But here's the thing, it wasn't just any kind of community. It was authentic. And there were some defining marks that reveal what made it authentic. And we're just going to look at a couple of those things. Now, I don't know what picture comes to mind for you when you hear the word church. Maybe for you it's ornate stained glass stone buildings in Europe. That's a picture of one that my wife and I saw when we were in Bath in England. Maybe for you when you hear the word church, you think of this place, this theater. Or maybe it's a small, smelly building with squeaky wooden floors and really uncomfortable wooden pews that you went to as a kid. You know, whatever your memories or thoughts, for most people, the word church, when they hear the word church, it usually correlates to a place, a physical building. But the single most important word that the writer Luke uses in this passage that we just read to describe what church is the word fellowship. The Greek word, the original language, the word was koinonia. And it means that which was held in common. It's a word that has far more in common with J.R. Tolkien's Fellowship of the Ring than it does to the idea of a building. Fellowship, koinonia, implies community, unity, kinship, shared purpose, shared experience. And here's the thing, they were devoted to it. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship. They were bound to it, committed to it. They were in it for the long haul. They had made the decision to marry themselves to it and to each other. This wasn't hopping in a Formula One race car where there's only one seat and just doing it by yourself. No, this was piling into a hot rod that's got tons of seats and tons of room for everybody. They were on a long-term journey together. As a community, whatever happened to come their way. It wasn't some superficial consumeristic choice. They had made the choice that they were in. They were committed to each other, and because of that, they spent lots of time together. They were devoted to spending time doing life together, eating together, playing and praying together, laughing and learning and worshiping God together. They shared their possessions, their homes, their food, their hearts. And you know what? I think that's something many of us don't fully experience. Because the thought of somebody knowing us freaks us out. And so we keep people at arm's length and kind of join community on the edges. And we don't really connect. You know, in this world of social media, smartphones, and everything else, it seems like we're more connected than ever. But study after study shows that we are actually the loneliest we've ever been. The early church, the people in the early church, they were connected and connecting. They were doing life together. They were going deep. They were knowing and being known. Something else that stood out for this community that Luke mentions is how they were voluntarily dependent on each other. There were no needy persons among them. You know, in this culture that just where self first rules the day, that is an amazing line. There were no needy persons among them. The people in this community were voluntarily, willingly, eagerly sharing their lives, their time, their possessions with each other in order to make sure everyone had what they needed. But that's not all. They also experienced unity. They were together on things. Now, that doesn't mean they all looked alike, dressed alike, thought alike, agreed on everything. That's not what it was about. That describes a cult, actually. The early church was comprised of several races, opinions, cultures, and they often disagreed on things. But they did so in a very open and healthy way. And that's something we don't experience so much today in our culture today. There is no room for disagreement anymore. You're either here or you're there. For us or against us. Take your pick. There's no room for disagreement. That wasn't like that in the first church. True unity? It's about people sharing a oneness of heart, a oneness of purpose, an agreement on the majors of life, theology, and doctrine, which is why real unity comes when you have a common vision, a common mission, and a common set of values. And there is no unity deeper than that of spiritual unity. Believing the same thing and moving in that direction together. Another thing you'll notice about this community is that they intentionally trafficked in grace. They intentionally trafficked in grace. It's so important to pick up on that, because if you've ever been a part of a community that does that, you know it's something that just doesn't happen. It has to be forged, crafted, intentionally developed through choice after choice, decision after decision, commitment after commitment. And no choice or commitment will grow and sustain a community like Grace Unleashed amongst simple, everyday, ordinary people. People like you, people like me. Grace. Man, when I think about grace, I get all fired up, because like the song says, it's amazing. Grace really is amazing. But it seems like a lot of us have no idea what grace looks like when it's dispensed relationally, because we rarely experience it that way. We don't often have it shown to us, and we often don't or can't show it to others. So grace becomes this kind of ethereal, bizarre thing that's tantalizing at the edges, but we never really experience how astounding, how stunning, how staggering it really is. You know, there's so many great stories of grace out there. But man, there is one story in the Bible that I think just absolutely nails this grace that's dispensed relationally. You know, because Jesus was known for his radical grace, he would do things that just had people scratching their heads. So he was often misunderstood and misaligned with the people of his day. And so one day, this woman, she's caught in the act of adultery. Now, we don't know whether she was married and she was with this guy, or if the guy was married and she was... That doesn't matter. She was caught in the act. And so she was brought to Jesus by some members of the religious sin patrol, you know, the Pharisees, the higher-ups, the religious elites of the day, to see what Jesus would do. You see, in that day and in that culture, adultery was punishable by death. It was a capital offense. Check out what happens. It says the teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery. And they made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now, what do you say?" And then we read this line. They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. See, at this point in time, Jesus was extremely popular. Crowds would just flock to listen to him teach. And the religious leaders were kind of feeling threatened that their power was being, directed over to Jesus, and they wanted to get him out of the picture, but there was so much public opinion on his side, they would look like the bad guys. And so they thought the best way to do this is for him to undo himself. And so they figured, we've got him now. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. And when they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "If any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her." At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left with the woman still standing there. Jesus asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." beautiful story. What's interesting is everybody but Jesus saw a woman caught in adultery. Someone who was a moral failure, somebody that was deserving of condemnation and death. But through grace, Jesus saw a precious child of God. He saw someone who, given the chance, could move past their past and step into the person that God created them to be. Someone who could drink deeply from the well of forgiveness and be bathed in amazing, astounding grace and get a second chance. And the same goes for you and for me. The reason grace ought to flow freely in Christian community is because Jesus was all about grace, and he balanced it so beautifully with truth. Grace allows us to draw near, not only to God, but to others without fear. And that's something that you and I or anyone can belong to. And maybe when you hear that, you're thinking, that is the kind of community I would love to be a part of. But there's this thing. There's this thing from my past, this thing in my life, this thing that I've done, this thing that I haven't done, this thing that's been done to me, this thing that just keeps tripping me up. Every time I think I've got a mastery of it, it trips me up again, and therefore I am disqualified. If that's you, if that's the narrative running through your head, listen to this. Brennan Manning, in his book, All is Grace, wrote this. Listen to this. Grace is sufficient even though we huff and puff with all our might to try to find something or someone it cannot cover. Grace is enough. He is enough. Jesus is enough. Man, when a community dispenses the grace of Jesus, a place is created that is safe and open and transformational. It's a place that is safe to draw near, a place that is where you can finally belong. But you may be sitting there thinking, I just don't know, does a community like that even exist anymore? Is something like that even real or possible? And I would say to that, it can and it does. And here's why I say that, because Jesus is still around. Jesus is alive and well, penetrating, impacting, and transforming lives. This church that began so long ago is still around, gathering people together that are in need of transformation, in need of God's forgiveness, and gathering them with people that have already experienced that forgiveness and are being transformed even as they continue to walk with Jesus. But let's be honest, the church doesn't always pull that off very well, does it? Sometimes they just get it wrong. But when a church gets this right, there is nothing like it. Nothing. You can experience that. But here's the thing. Okay, we're just going to keep this real. It's going to take something on your part. Like the people in that early church, you need to commit yourself to a church community. To make a choice to devote yourself to the fellowship, to the koinonia, to become a part of the community. Now, whether that's here or somewhere else, that's up to you to decide. But here's the thing. Many people date churches. They never really stick around for too long. They're just kind of hopping about. Others, they stake a claim on a church. They go, yeah, that's my church. But they remain distant, on the margins, attending only when something better isn't on the agenda. And then there are those who, indeed, they have a committed relationship with their church, but they're not all in. And because of that, they're not fully known by the community. They don't rely on the community when they're struggling or in need. Instead, they pretend that everything is okay. I'm good. Look at me, I got my church teeth in. When in reality, things aren't good. And you know what? That is really sad. That's a sad state of affairs because, like the opening song the band sang, if you aren't connected and committed, who's going to pick you up when you fall? Who's going to come around when you break? Who's going to drive you home? We need each other. We need to trust, rely, and depend on each other. God gave us each other to walk alongside, to challenge one another, and encourage one another as we make our way down this road called life. So let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some in their habit of doing, but encouraging one another. All the more as you see the day approaching, and the day is the day that Jesus returns and sets everything back the way it should be. You know, churches have this thing, it's called membership. It's cool. We have it here too. We just call it partnership. Because partnership to us it emotes a picture of team, of people linking their arms together and working together to execute and live out the mission that Jesus has us on. Namely, to take the life-changing message, the gospel message, to this city and to the world. And even though partnership evokes that picture of teamwork and doing it together, partnership still takes commitment. But I'll tell you what, it's so worth it. It is so worth it. Because you know someone has your back and you have someone else's back. And you may be sitting here going, well, I don't even know what that means. Ha! Cheap plug here. Next week, as you saw in the preview, we're having Class 1. It's the first of 4 foundational classes that we have in our discipleship pathway called The River. And this is the class that talks about how this church began, why it's here, why we do what we do, because we do some things that could seem quirky. But when you come to Class 1, it's like you're going to have those aha moments. You're going to be going, that's why you do that. Oh, that makes so much more sense. You're going to be able to talk to some of the staff, ask any question you want. And then at the end, we're going to talk about what it means to be a partner. And there's no pressure. This isn't like you can't leave here until you become a partner. We want you to be a partner, but only if you want to be a partner and commit to this church. And say, that's my koinonia, that's my fellowship, that's my family, that's my tribe, that's my home. And so if you want to do that, Class 1's happening next week. 1 p.m., so right after the service, we're meeting at the underground. It's going to be like 2 hours, and I would encourage you to sign up. Even if you're here and you're a partner and you haven't taken this in over like a year, take it again. We've had so many partners go through it and go, man, I'm glad I just got that refresher, that reminder, that shot of, yeah, this is what we're about. So make sure you sign up. Registration closes on Wednesday. We've already got quite a few people coming to it. The more the merrier. Community happens around a shared activity when people get together to do a particular something. And so over the next several months, we're doing everything we can to intentionally create opportunities for all of us to share in an experience together. The first one's coming up Sunday, July 10th, 1 p.m. We're having another TMP hangout. We did these all through the pandemic because it was the only place we could really meet and see each other. We had one at the beginning of June. It was fantastic. It's felt like July weather then, so this might be like March weather. But hey, come on out. We're going to be doing another one at the beginning of August, Sunday, August 7th. The only thing you need to bring is a smile and a chair. Maybe a friend, picnic lunch, Frisbee, whatever, bocce. We're also going to be doing something that we haven't done in a long time. We're going to be having our church picnic /barbecue. It's always a popular, it's a favorite. We haven't been able to do it for obvious reasons. It's happening Sunday, August 28th. So mark it on your calendar. It's going to take all of us to pull this thing off. So we're going to be sending out emails asking you to jump in and help out wherever you'd like to barbecue. Great, we want to hear from you. Okay? In the fall, we're going to be adding Class 3 and Class 4 to our foundational classes. We're going to be offering courses, and we're going to be providing opportunities for you to get plugged into a connection group. A group of people that just hang out during the week, maybe just talk about the coffee questions, do another study, whatever it happens to be, but just do life together. Trafficking grace, living in community. And you can hop in and be a part of that. But again, that's your deal. It's up to you to take that step, whatever that step is for you, to be a part of that authentic community. You know, for some of you, the most valuable part of coming here on a Sunday morning is that you can drop off your kids, send them down the hall, know they're going to be safe, and they're going to learn about the God that created them and loves them beyond anything they could ever imagine at a level that they would understand, and then come in here and sit down and hopefully be encouraged as you kind of, just get distracted from all the pressures of life. And you'll be reminded that you aren't alone. That there is a God who created you on purpose, for a purpose, and He's watching over you and taking care of you. That's what you come here to experience. You know what? That's fantastic. That will never, ever change. For some of you, this place has become that place where you forge some friendships. And you look forward to Sunday, man, because this is when you get to hang out with the most life-affirming, encouraging, positive people that you have in your life. But for some of us, this place is all of that and a whole lot more. This place is our fellowship, our koinonia, our family, our tribe, our home. And through this place, we have become reconnected to our spiritual lineage that goes back 2,000 years. And so we get together on a Sunday and we celebrate communion, the Lord's Supper. We're going to be doing that next week. We meet during the week. We do things together that our family has done for centuries. We read stories from the Bible of those who have gone before us. We sing, we talk about the good things God has done through His Son Jesus and is continuing to do. And this family, this church, this community is what draws us out of the emptiness of our isolated, individualistic lives and regrounds our personal story in the greatest story of all, the story of God's redeeming work through Jesus in this world. That is a great story to be a part of. Here is where we become spiritually equipped to make a difference in this community as we move together forward in community, as a community, to share the life-changing message of Jesus Christ with Nanaimo and the world. So come on, jump in. There's lots of room in the passenger seat. Let's be passengers together, because you know what? Life is better together. Let's pray. God, we thank you for this thing called church that, sometimes there's so much baggage around that word. And I think we miss the true essence, the true meaning of what the church is. It's not a building. Yeah, we have buildings that we come and we gather, but it's being the church. Not just on a Sunday, but throughout the week. It's living in community with one another. It's being able to have that lifeline where we can reach out and say, hey, I'm struggling, I'm having a tough time, or how can I help you? And we don't have to worry about the phone being hung up, or worse yet, I don't even know who to call. And so we thank you that we have that. And I just pray that each of us would say, okay, what's my role in that? And that we would take that next step as you nudge us and encourage us to step forward and deeper into this beautiful community called the church. Thank you for loving us, and we pray all of this in your powerful name. Amen.